connection, right, when you're listening, and that's felt.
What'd you say?
No.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
Diane and I are connected.
Yes.
My friend Mike.
No.
Hello and welcome to the Sweet Spot. We are excited to be here today.
Welcome.
I tell you, I hope that you guys have enjoyed your summer and now enjoying your fall because the weather is changing, but it is still so beautiful outside. And today, we have a very special guest in the Sweet Spot with us today.
Wow.
I tell you, I feel like when I'm around this man, I feel like I walk away with just so much knowledge because he's wisdom. He's just so full of wisdom, and his presence, he has such a sweet,
gentle,
spirit,
loving,
right?
Yes.
He's fascinating. So I'm excited for you, the listening audience, because you are in for a treat. Today we have with us Mr. Rob Faw.
Woo!
Joining us in the Sweet
Our
Spot
buddy Rob
today,
Faw.
who is a dear friend of ours, and he's a new author.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, he has written a fascinating book. I'm blown away. And
A new author again.
Again.
Yes,
right.
yes. So
A
he
new
did.
author
Yes,
again.
yes.
And I'm sure that you guys are going to be blown away. The title of his new book is The Adam Connection. Now, I just want to tell you, you need to go and find this book. Online, we'll give you his website. We'll give you all the information.
Why don't we do that now? Let's get it in one time right now.
Go ahead. Why don't we do that?
Well, you can buy it online at Amazon.com. You could go to my website, robfaw.com, and go to the book page, and that'll link you back to Amazon as well. So that's probably the most convenient.
Amazon.com, huh?
There you go.
All right.
Beautiful.
Excellent.
So
Thank
listen, you need to please go out and get this book. You are in for a treat. It is very fascinating. We won't give it away right now, but I'm just saying, write it down, Amazon.com, The Adam Connection, One Family Under God. You're in for a treat.
All right. So you know what? Let's actually give the audience an additional treat today.
Okay.
Right. Let's let them get their own Rob Faw connection. So let's start with the Rob Faw, and then we'll go back a few generations to Adam.
Just
but first,
a few
but
generations.
yes. So maybe 144 to be exact. But
Okay.
let's maybe start, Rob, by telling us a little bit of your growing up.
Well, I appreciate that, Michael and Diane. Thank you for having me on the show. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area.
Yes.
And my family are Presbyterians, and church was a big part of our growing up.
Okay.
And I played sports like a lot of kids in that, and delivered papers for the Washington Post.
Okay,
it was a big part of my, earning a little extra money so I could afford those Converse sneakers to play basketball.
Yes, very good.
And so,
very good.
No, I love that area. My father was a fireman. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And of course, the things I always remember is I'd come home after school and I'd say, Mom, where are you, right? And so those of us that had stay-at-home moms, we really appreciate when our mom's available, right?
Absolutely.
And so we moved to Florida when I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
And came down to Clearwater, Florida, and
that's where we have a connection.
That's So anyway, we both went to Clearwater High School.
That's right.
And,
Go Tornadoes.
All right. Well, I was born in Clearwater too, right?
So we're all related.
Yes.
So anyway, and moved down there and. Went on to the junior college, local junior college.
Yes.
Played a couple of years of high school basketball, a couple of years in junior college, and met my bride there.
Wow.
Yep, and Jill, we're coming up on our 44th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
And
Rob.
she's a very sweet person.
You just slipped that in there, just like
44.
40. That's a celebration.
Exactly.
So anyway, she's very sweet, and after my sophomore year in college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do then, and it was, it was right at the tail end of the Vietnam War, and so I said, Jill, let's go up into the library and we're going to study.
Oh, yes.
So we're up in the library, we're going to study, right?
Yes.
So we went up to the library, and I said, Jill, I could join the Air Force. I'd have a job, and we'd have income. I could go to school at night, finish up my school. I said, we can get married. What do you think about that? She said, that's good. Let's go do that.
Oh, wow.
So that was my proposal.
You're good.
Yes.
And so now back in those days, there was no internet.
Oh,
That's
yes.
right.
Cell phones did not exist.
Nope, not at all.
And so when I joined the United States Air Force, I'm an Air Force veteran, we would write each other.
Service, yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
That's awesome.
So we would write each other. I happened to be a dorm chief, and so when the lights would go off at 9 o'clock,
Right.
I'd go into the latrine, I have my pen and paper,
Right.
and I'm writing Jill a little note.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. And so for about 3 months there, we were writing each other back and forth, and thank goodness for the U.S. Postal Service at the time.
Awesome.
And so that was great. And but we've from that point in time, we lived down in South Florida. We moved to England the first time. We were there for a year, and then we kind of came back to the United States. But we've lived all over the world. And as you know, we actually lived in Canada.
Yeah, that's true.
So I love that. One of the best
Absolutely.
experience of our lives. We lived
right.
up in the North York area.
Yes.
And 2 little baby boys at the time. And so I've lived in England 3 times. And
So good. Let's go backwards a little bit though.
Yes.
We kind of move through this Washington D.C. and growing up phase quickly. Siblings.
Siblings.
Did you have siblings?
so I've got 5 sisters.
Oh,
wow.
So, right? And
Yeah, 5 sisters. And so where do you rank in that order?
so there's 5 in the family, 5 in the family, 4 sisters. My oldest sister has since passed.
Okay.
And loved her, Kathy. In fact, she
Right.
was one of the inspirations for the story. She was the first researcher in the family. So Kathy was a
Okay.
really good girl. And then I was number 2.
Yes.
Okay.
And then 3 other sisters. And so my sister Peggy followed, then my sister Colleen,
Wow.
and then my sister Beth, Elizabeth.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, and I never really thought about it, but there's a little bit of an Irish heritage there, right? Colleen and Kathleen and
Right.
things like that, right? And
yes.
so my mom, and as it turns out, we can talk about, ancestry along the way, but that's very much in keeping with our family's ancestry.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Fascinating.
amazing. So you have these 4 sisters, and did they? You were a basketball player. That was your main sport, right?
I played a little bit of baseball,
little baseball as
played
well.
some basketball, and I was not a track and field guy. I'm a long distance guy now, but yeah, I love sports. And really, the story behind sports was I was in 4th grade at Forestville Elementary School.
Okay.
And my buddy John Allen liked this girl called Joan. And I thought to myself, what the heck? Joan likes John, and the only difference that I could see was that he was on the baseball team.
Oh,
And that's why I started playing
so
sports.
Cute.
Right?
I love that.
So anyway, 4th grade. And so I started out playing baseball.
yes.
And actually I don't think I ever went out with Joan, but anyway, I started playing baseball.
Yes.
But that was the motivation. There's always a motivation. There's a woman
That's
involved,
so
right?
awesome.
So
That's
for a lot of
so
guys, that was my story.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so-
That's too cute.
And
That's
you
amazing.
played basketball at Clearwater High School, my alma mater, where I grew up in Florida. And my siblings played basketball for the Clearwater Tornadoes as well. So
Yeah.
Oh,
we
beautiful.
have a common connection there.
We do, and there's always hope for those of us that are overachievers, right? And my junior year of Clearwater High School, I
Right.
played 16 minutes the entire year.
Wow.
Now, for those of us who remember, there were
Right.
8-minute quarters.
That's right.
I played the last 2 quarters of the last 2 games. Right, on a team that was one of the best in the country. They had
That's
one of
right.
our players went on to play professional
That's
sports,
right.
football team with New Orleans Saints. And so, but I just kept persevering, and I just, I was happy to be on the team, and I never really thought anything about it. And over the summer, my coach, Jack Wilson,
Jack Wilson, great man.
asked me. He
Yes.
said, Bobby. He said, I was Bobby at the time. He said, Bobby. He said, I think we need to change your shot a little bit. And so he said, let me bring you over here to the basket. So I used to kind of bring the ball behind my head,
Right.
which
Right.
isn't always the most consistent way of
Right.
shooting, right?
Right.
And so I would shoot the ball, first 2 times, didn't even hit the rim.
Wow.
And so then after a while, I became a pretty good shooter. And if there had been 3-point lines back in those days,
yes,
I would have been one of the best in the county.
Very good.
So anyway, yeah, that was the story there.
Oh,
but
that's
I started my
awesome.
senior year, and honorable mention all county.
Wow.
Just a typical overachiever story, but it's a story of perseverance, right?
Right.
That's awesome.
That's
Jack
amazing.
Wilson. Wow.
That's amazing. So now you do this, and as you talked about it, how you proposed to Jill as an academic would in the library.
Exactly. Yes, there you go.
Yeah, so and now you begin to embark on the world. How many countries would you estimate you've been in?
So I appreciate that. I've had more experiences than some and less than others, but I've had executive leadership experience in probably over 50 countries.
Wow.
Right? And, you know, some really interesting stories associated with those travels.
Can you give us one of the more interesting stories?
So one story, there was a period of time where I was out of the country for 30 days. And we were marketing to our distribution channels, you know, with a technology product. And so, oh my gosh, I was such a bad traveler. I carried like the biggest suitcases. I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know at the time.
Right.
That's us.
I got better as time went on. Yes. So anyway, we went to London, then we went down to Israel. And then from Israel went to Hong Kong, as I recall, then Singapore and Australia, and then we came home, right? So it was literally an around-the-world trip in 30 days. Well, the one story is there was a buddy of mine, his name was Roger.
Okay.
And Roger kind of considered himself a ladies' man. He was a single guy, and, right? And so, you know, it was just kind of, you know, that was him. And so as we were leaving Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, you had to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know the security is very tight, as you know, in that area. Thank God, in many respects. And so, anyway, Roger comes over with this very attractive officer, and an army officer. Right. And it was a woman, and he says, Rob, he says, tell this person who I am. And I kind of looked at him, and I said, I've never seen that person in my entire life. And he was going through a security check.
No.
Oh my gosh. He said, no, you can't do that. So he was, anyway, and the story there was he was really nervous about being in Israel. The rest of us were moving on, and he was going back to the States. And so anyway, that was really an ill-timed I thought it was kind of funny, but I don't think the security person thought it was funny. Roger was mortified, and so anyway, I quickly adjusted and offered my apologies. But that was an experience there.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Now, you spoke of 50 countries, and you kind of slipped in there the fact that you were a business leader. Kind of explain to our audience what it is exactly that you did.
No, I appreciate that, Michael. Back in the late 1980s, Fortune 50 company that we all know, AT&T, acquired our company, and we were a technology company in the data communications area. And I was one of maybe a half a dozen people that were brought into their leadership development program. And I was very grateful for that. And actually, the side story is the little group that I was a part of, I had worldwide business development responsibility for this little software technology that was invented up at Bell Laboratories. And it was the advent of broadband communications.
Oh, wow.
And so it was very cool. So I had a number of experiences selling to international telephone operators and equipment manufacturers. And so that kind of began the process of expanding my horizon, right, and just thinking more broadly. And I was always wired that way, but those experiences really brought it out.
Right.
And so that was my process. I started out in financial and accounting, and then I got into business development and marketing, then general management, then on to become a president of an international division and CEO. And so I've had my experiences.
Yes.
And have worked with venture capital companies and startup businesses. And so I love, my passion is really helping people and organizations reach their full potential. And so that's how I'm wired, right? So, going back when I was on boards of directors, and I am still involved in those areas now, I just always got a big kick out of helping organizations be as good as they could be.
Wow.
You wrote a book to that effect as well, didn't you?
Well, I did. I was on one of those around the world trips. I was in Southeast Asia, and we that was another funny story. So a buddy of mine, 6'3", 6'4", his name's Dave. We were flying from Hong Kong up to Taipei, and so we were in a 747 jet, right? We were the biggest people on the planet.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
We just looked completely out of place.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so we end up going into.
I've never had that experience.
Well, so
yes.
anyway, we're connected.
Yes.
We can live through this story.
All right. Yes. Okay. Yes.
So anyway, we go to Taipei and we end up staying at a really nice hotel there, and we go to check in, and the person at the check-in counter said, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Fall, we have no rooms for you." And we were really tired. I mean, it had been like an 18-hour day. We were the tallest people on this plane.
Yeah.
So anyway, we come in and said, is there anything you can do? I said, well, we do have the presidential suite.
Oh, okay.
Okay, right? And I'm thinking to myself, yikes, I cannot afford that. I know I won't be reimbursed for that. And I said, well, do you have anything else? No, that's okay, Mr. Fall. That's complimentary on our part. We'll put you up in the presidential suite. So we go up to the presidential suite. We walk into the front door. There's a baby grand piano.
Oh, wow.
In the presidential suite at
Yes.
Grand Hyatt in Taipei. And so I immediately got on my phone with Dave, and I said, Dave, we're going to have a business meeting up in my room right now. So he came up. There were 3 bathrooms. There were 7, 2 kitchens. It was just phenomenal.
Right.
So the first thing we did the next morning is we got on the phone with the people we were going to meet that day in Taipei. All the meetings are going to be at the hotel.
Yes.
In my room.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So we were connecting even back then, right?
Yes.
So that was that. But yes, we've had our experiences, and that was another kind of a memorable one that sticks out.
Oh, right.
Wow, that's
Excellent.
beautiful.
Excellent.
That's
So I want you to tell them the title of the book, and it is it has so much depth, and it is really one of those books that when you pick it up, right, you learn something new. You learn something different, and it really has stood the test of time. So tell people about that book a little bit before. I mean, we will talk about the Adam Connection, but tell them a little bit
the
about
first book.
That's right.
That's right. So we were. I was flying back from Seoul, Korea, to Los Angeles, and I had this idea. And the idea was to write a book, and so I started outlining the book, and it's called World's Best Value, Global Competition in the Information Age.
Yes.
And so I just started researching and writing and basically creating a framework for developing world-class organizations. So it's a book about excellence. It's a book about, the human spirit.
Right.
And the capabilities that we have, even in business, right, to achieve at levels that are just kind of beyond, if you will, kind of going to work, doing our job, and then coming home, right? So it was a bit of a framework that helps people, organizations, develop world-class organizations. And so had a lot of fun writing it. That was a journey that took another couple of years because I was running my business as well at the time. But I remember distinctly fast-forwarding to a condominium that I was staying at outside of London. I remember on the weekends going up and just, I would always be pulling out all this reference material and kind of piecing it together. I'm a little bit of a systems thinker. Yes. I love complexity, which is kind of odd, right? And so, this idea of systems, I love how everything's connected and kind of finding those little threads that, connect with seemingly unrelated items. And so, it's a framework thinking kind of a book on developing organizations.
Very good.
So
very good. And the book is a result of your learnings and how you tried to operate businesses as you built them, and many times you were brought in to turn businesses around, right?
Well, that's right. Yes. One of the groups that I worked with was one of the largest private equity firms in the world.
Right.
And we had done quite well in an organization up in Scotland, of all places, which does relate to the next book that we'll be talking about later.
Yes.
And in that scenario, we basically learned that there were ways in which to take technology, grow from there, and have it affect people's lives. So, yeah, that was quite a journey.
Awesome, awesome. So well traveled. Give me 3 of your favorite cities.
Well, Toronto.
Okay.
We'll take that.
I love Toronto.
I like that.
I've got a real soft spot for Toronto.
Yes.
It was the first international city that I had lived and worked in. Michael, you remember a number of years ago, we actually drove by
That's right.
the home that we had lived in. And at the time it was called Willowdale, and now it's called North York, I believe. And so it's in the North York area.
Yes.
So I love Toronto. And I think another city that I really appreciate is Hong Kong. There's so much vibrancy in Hong Kong.
Wow.
It's, you know, the language, of course, is a challenge if you don't speak Chinese or a dialect of Chinese, and so, but the energy associated with what's happening in that region of the world is just fascinating. And at the time that I was doing a lot of traveling there, it was part of the British Commonwealth.
Right.
And so, of course, it's now part of China. And so, but it's a very vibrant city, and I love that. But I would say it's hard to beat London.
Wow.
Yes.
I've traveled to London probably 100 times.
Wow.
And so, and I've lived in England 3 different times. So I remember when Jill and I were living over in England, the first time when I was in the Air Force, I had a 1963 Austin Mini that we could see the road as we were changing gears. We were so poor. And so, but we managed to have a trip going up the motorway up to Scotland, and no foreshadowing, or it must have been foreshadowing at the time. I said, we were crossing from England to Scotland. I said, Jill, I said, this is really strange. I feel like I've been here before. She says, oh, this is very, you know, it's a countryside, it's a little bit like England, so on and so forth. Well, as it turns out, my ancestry does go back through Scotland. And so it was one of those, what I would experience maybe as a deja vu moment.
Wow.
And so, you know, science would maybe suggest that we're all carrying around our DNA from our ancestors, and maybe that was a little glimpse that I had at that time. But I love Toronto, I love Hong Kong, and I love London. Those are my 3 favorite cities.
That's awesome. Now, in your travels, you've been to so many different places. Do you speak any other languages? Like, have you picked up any language from any of the countries that you've traveled?
Spanish.
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit of Spanish.
Okay. Muy bien.
Spanish. When I was going back to the Washington, D.C., and when I was growing up there, I had 3 years of Latin.
Okay.
And so Latin as a Romance language, right, is a root of a lot of the Mediterranean languages.
Yes.
And so Spanish is not far off from Italian, and Italian, of course, rooted in Latin. I had 3 years of French.
Okay.
That's right, in grade school.
Okay.
And so I seem to remember the teacher kind of scolding me for, in one of the exercises, we were supposed to toss a ball to one of the classmates. And I don't know, maybe this is when I was going through my baseball phase with Joan, right? And I threw back and I won, you know, and so I seem to remember getting a little bit of trouble then. And but that's another story. So French, I had a little bit of French, and I had a year of Spanish. And so in the military, right, I went in as an accounting specialist, actually a technology person. But then they said, well, we're looking for language specialists. I had a little bit of an aptitude for language. Probably my youngest son, who you spoke to last night, speaks fluent Spanish. And so he has that aptitude. So I said, well, I'll go ahead and try that. And they said, well, congratulations, Airman Faw, you passed the language test. And I said, well, that's very interesting. What are the options? They said, well, you can go to Russia or Vietnam.
Oh, boy.
And then I said, well, what do you have in finance and accounting? Right? And so that's what we did then. So I have an aptitude. And but one of the things I find with languages is really you want to be a good listener. And I think most people in the world actually have are conversant in English. And even if they're not fluent in English, they really appreciate if you just listen. And so, and speak slowly, right? And so I think I have been able to navigate the language differences really just by, in many respects, you know, A, having an aptitude, and then B, being a good listener.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, want to have you quickly before we introduce the Adam Connection and what is going to be our next segment. So you're not able to get everything now. You're going to have to tune back in, but we really have a good feel of who you are. Being just a business guru, I would love if you had 3 leadership tips that you might give, just to the lay person. I mean, all of us leads in some way.
That's right. Well, these are learnable skills, and I would say the #1 skill of leadership is empathy. Right. So followers will not follow leaders who are not empathetic.
Wow, okay.
And so empathy is, if you have it, double down on it.
Right.
If you don't have it, go get it.
Right.
Because it can be learned. So empathy is very important.
Yes.
I think you want to be a good communicator.
Right.
And all good communications begin with effective listening.
Right.
Right. And so how many times have we been in a conversation where we're thinking about our response to what someone asks, as opposed to, right?
Yes.
As opposed to really embracing either the question or the conversation.
That's right.
And that there's a connection, right, when you're listening, and that's felt.
What'd you say?
No.
As I'm looking at Diane, yes. Yes.
Diane and I are connected. My friend Mike.
No. I didn't mean it that way. Yes.
So then the third area, so empathy, and then I'd say listening, and I'd say the other thing is really just be grounded, right? Because if you're not grounded, you really won't survive, the ability to lead others, right? And people want to follow authentic leaders.
That's true.
Right? And so when you're grounded, right, that leads to authenticity. And so, again, those are things that can be developed.
Those are great tips.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome.
So we've talked about this tremendous business career, and as time has moved on, you've continued to develop a stronger relationship with Christ. You said you had that growing up, and it was a part of you, very much a part of your upbringing growing up, and it has continued to build. And I think there are some significant points you'll probably refer to in your life and your spiritual growth, but it's led you to the writing of the Adam Connection. One family under God, and how we're all connected. And so we're going to tease this and tell you how important this book is, and how empowering and inspiring it can be for you. And you can go to Amazon.com and look under the Adam Connection. You can order this book anytime, like right now if you want to. You can go to Amazon and Amazon.com, order the book, and come on back well, it'd be really cool if you order it now, and then next week you can hear how what you've already read developed.
That's right. Sounds good to me.
All right.
Sounds good to me. We want to thank Rob for being here in the sweet spot with us. Rob, thank you so much. You are one fascinating individual.
Went so fast, my goodness.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the sweet spot. We want you to tune in next week, because we're going to have Rob back, and we're going to talk about the Adam Connection, and you don't want to miss it.
Amazon.com.
Until next time, stay in your sweet spot.
Woo!